Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. This is Love the Afrobeat Music Talk Radio, your number one African Caribbean online radio. We are here today to give you a very special program. And this program, we've been waiting for this program for a very long time. As a matter of fact, a couple of months ago, we did a program that bordered on rethinking correctional institutional governance in Africa, where we had a very good um, advocate from Zimbabwe. We are going to have Makaita Magarezano with us, and also Mr. Joseph Osudi, a human rights lawyer, who will be joining us on this program. And we've been waiting for this special guest, Mr. Lester Young, for a very long time. He's an advocate. He's an expert with respect to re-entry programs. There are so many programs out there, but we need more of this. He's dedicated his life to put together programs that will put people towards redemption. When we say redemption, we'll come to it as we go along. And it is with my pleasure to introduce Mr. Lester Young. Hi, Lester. How you doing?
Man, I'm blessed, man. I'm blessed. I'm so honored to be on this radio show, man. I've been watching you all for a while, and the conversation came up, as you mentioned, about prison reform and prison advocacy work. And, it's a very important topic. And just, about a year ago, I had an opportunity to visit Africa for the first time, Ghana, for the first time. And that really gave me a completely different perspective of how just the colonialism and all of these things impact our society from that aspect of incarceration. So I'm excited, man. I'm ready to dig in and share some insight into how I see it here in America, and just having just that. I had stayed in Ghana for 14 days and had that experience, the year of return, to go back and experience some of it, man. It was a very powerful experience. So again, thank you.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. And for starters, I always ask our guests this simple question.
Hmm.
And the first question that comes to mind is, who is Lester Young?
Very, very, very good
Very
question.
loaded.
I would say the person I am today is someone who God has created, and as we know, just from our traditions in Africa, is that we believe that we are here as a continuation of carrying on the torch for our ancestors, right? So now understanding that, it for me, I understand that is Lester is someone who has been created and destined to be an advocate, a voice for change, to be an example, use his experiences. Unfortunately, as someone who served 22 years in the prisons here in the United States, to now find destiny and purpose and use my experience to be make a global impact in the world by letting people know that our prison systems are in great need of transformation, and my voice has to be one of those voices to be heard, and using my experience to continue to make an impact. So I would say Lester today is a community advocate, someone who's using his lived experience to make impact in the world.
Thank you very much, Lester. And the other question that I would like to proceed with is that what inspired you to pursue this
It's fine.
program that you are embarking on?
Panther, I mean, as I mentioned to you, I was sentenced to life in prison in the United States, and by the grace of God, I was granted relief after serving 22 years and 5 months in the prison system. But as I said, one thing I've learned about destiny is that when God destined you to be on a certain path, sometimes we take the wrong course, and then God reshift us. So here I am today. My experience of imprisonment helped me to redefine who I am, but also to give me clarity about my destiny. My destiny has been created. I've been destined to do what I'm doing right now in this very moment. And that again is using my voice, my experience to elevate and advocate and remove a lot of the harm that has happened to the people around the world. Here in the United States, we have over 2.5 million people in the United States that are in prison, right? We lead the world globally and nationally in incarceration. This is what it is, and you find the majority of those that are incarcerated are Black and brown people who are African descent. So me going and experience what I experienced those years of my incarceration really gave me a broader understanding of why it is so important that we use our voices and our story to advocate to change some of these policies that we see that are here in the United States, but now we're looking at it in a global place like Africa, global places like Africa, and we can see that the prisons are still being set up in a way where it's dehumanizing the people and not educating, not rehabilitating these individuals by no means. So this is what we have to do, and I believe that that's what has put me on this path to this very day.
Yeah, it's great to take it from the point that you just stated. Why do you think is the prison system or the justice systems serving as the Black and the brown people right? Because it feels like um, sometimes I sit back and think about that. Why is it that it's only one race?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sometimes you have to speak truth to power.
Yeah.
One race have been incarcerated. It seems like, I mean, the other side doesn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
And once we go in there, psychologically, mentally speaking, it affects us.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we come out and we don't have the right support systems, it exacerbates a lot of things. And for you to have been through the system, what is your take on that?
I would say, going back again to what I mentioned to you earlier, being a person who lived his entire life in America, and knowing that the laws of America has always been not equal. You always had that there were more crimes. They will make you believe that they're the only ones committing crimes as black people in America, right? That's what you would have you see. But we know and understand that America, and like you say, speak truth to power. Unfortunately, America has been built upon slavery and racism from the beginning. That's the foundation of this country, right? So we know and understand that the reason why you find these prisons are overflowing with those that are currently in prison that are Black and brown people, we have to remember that after slavery in America was abolished in 1865, the next phase of slavery was creating prisons. Prisons were created as a form of, again, using the labor of Black people in this country to continue to build this country, right? So when we look at this today, we see that this is a very serious thing that we're facing. So that's the reason why, in all honesty, the reason why we find more Black and brown people in this country are incarcerated, because the foundation of it was built upon racism, white supremacy, Black inferiority, and it just continued to trickle in. And then have an opportunity for me, as I mentioned to you, the short time that I stayed in Ghana, visited Ghana, and to be able to go to the dungeon, the slave dungeon, right? And to see the slave dungeons and how it was the whole structure of it was set up to incarcerate our people before they shipped them across the diaspora of the different parts of the world, right? But some of the places where they held our ancestors were actually similar to what we now call jail cells in Africa, jail cells in the United States. So we know that this is the whole purpose of it, has always been to dehumanize and strip people of their human dignity. And that's why we see what we see today in prisons across Africa, prisons across America.
Yes, I originally am from Ghana.
Oh.
And I share your sentiment because, like I've always said on this program, when I was 12 years old, my brother took me to the Cape Coast Castle.
Mm.
And it was at that time a police post.
Mm.
And at 12, when I came out, I would like to tell you right now that I don't even want to see the building because it traumatized me.
Yeah.
What I saw there, what I experienced at 12, whenever I'm driving towards Cape Coast or going beyond Cape Coast or Elmina, for that matter, there are so many slave dungeons and what have you, castles dotted around the coast of Ghana. I don't feel the same. I really don't feel the same. So I share your sentiment. You come out a renewed person. And also you come out thinking that, oh, you know what? What my ancestors went through, I don't want nobody to go through that. So whatever help that I can do to help people who have been through what you've been through, I'll do it. And I share your sentiments and I commend you for what you've done because you've experienced it. It wasn't in the dungeon, but modern day dungeon. Your take on that, please.
Yeah, like I said, is when being in Cape Coast and seeing the dungeon and seeing how these small cells were created to hold hundreds of people in these small cells with no air ventilation, where people literally died. And to now being a person in America and seeing the jail cells, I wish there was a way that I could show some of the jail cells in the United States, and then you compare it to the slave dungeons in Cape Coast, right? It's very similar. So what I learned in this, brother, is that those who enslaved us back then, they not only enslaved our people and shipped them across the different diasporas, they also brought an ideology, a belief system, an architectural structure of how to enslave us, right? And they created prisons as another model. And the prison model that they have from Cape Coast was always about stripping people of their dignity, stripping them, beating them, not about rehabilitation. So we see here in America, in the earlier days of the American prisons, that's what it's always been, because they never understand, they never had a structure, a prison structure with dignity and respect and humanity. So now we see the change in the culture today, where people like myself are advocating, saying, if we're going to create prisons, then let's create prisons with a base of human dignity in it. Let's not strip people of their dignity as people because they've committed a crime. They've committed a crime, so that crime means that we as a collective body of people should now make the investment to help rehabilitate the minds and the spirits of these individuals so that they can be returned back into our communities and be successful. But that's not the model that we see. The model that we see is like we strip them of their dignity to a point where they cannot be an asset to the community ever again. It would only be liability. And most people, when they walk out of prison, they're traumatized. As you mentioned, that when you went to Cape Coast into the dungeons at 12 years old, you were traumatized by that environment. People are traumatized by being incarcerated for such a period of time. So here it is. No one is thinking about, what does rehabilitation look like? What does acclimating back in the community looks like for someone who's coming, who's a father, who's a mother, who's a brother, who's an uncle, who's a grandfather? We're not thinking about how do we prepare these individuals returning back into our community. So this is where my role is now, is to let's focus on human dignity, humanizing these individuals that are in this environment, helping them process the trauma that they endured during their incarceration so that they can return back into the community and be an asset, to be a liability, right? That's what we're looking at. Because not everyone, and I close with this, not everyone, we know the potential of prison. We look at Nelson Mandela, spent 27 years on Ruby Island, experienced all of the trauma. But because Nelson Mandela was on his destiny was to be who he was, right? To get out of that environment, become a president. Not every one of us can walk out and be a president of a country, but every one of us can become a leader in our community with the right education, with the right resources, with the right support. We can create many Nelson Mandelas in our society today if we focus on that part of it.
Yes, it's just like listener Ursula said, well said, Mr. Young. I mean, you couldn't have said it any better than this. One thing that I'm looking at right now is that it breaks you down mentally.
Yeah.
When you're incarcerated, and sometimes there are a lot of our brothers and sisters who are there, both here. Well, when we talk about Africa, mostly, or in the diaspora, mostly, apart from the fact that people are incarcerated because of their political or sexual orientation or what have you, um, no matter what it is, you go in there, you come back, you become a different person. So if the support system is not there,
yeah,
you're lost.
yeah.
But what you are doing right now, I commend you for that, because we need people like you who will be able to come out there and say, you know, hey, I've experienced the system. These are some of the things that you can do to redeem your dignity. Because all that is said and done, the only thing that we have is our dignity. But if it's broken, where do you go from here?
It takes a village, as we know the old African proverb says, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to help people rebound after prison. It takes a village, and it doesn't require punishing the people. Punishment does not change behavior. Punishment does not stop crime. Prisons does not stop crime, right? What changes people is that when the village comes together and provide the individual with the resources and the skills that they need to be successful to turn their lives around. And that's where we now understand, when we talk about rehabilitation, we talk about re-entry, we talk about transforming people's lives, transforming our communities. We as a group of people have to see that it's the only way that we can change the prisons in Africa and in America is that we have to see that it's the village responsibility to help individuals, help pour into the community, pour into the individuals inside of the system that will help them become better fathers. Because when we look at it here in America, right, the majority of the prison out of the 2.5 million people in American prisons, the majority of them are men. The majority of them are men inside of the prison system, right? So when we're talking about, when you take the men out of the family structure, what do you have? It collapsed, right? The family structure collapsed. So when I say it takes that village to power, when you have fathers who are sitting in these prisons, it's important for us as community leaders and the village people is to find ways to pour into that father, that man who's going to return back home to that family structure. When it says that, there's the African proverb says that you ask when you meet an elder, you ask, how are the children? How are the children doing? So if the children is hurt, most of our children in America, and I'm pretty sure in Africa, when you ask the question, how are the children? Most of the elders will say the children are not well. That means that the village is not well, right? Because the fathers have been taken out of the village. And because when the fathers are taken out of the villages, now the sons and the daughters no longer know what their identity is, what their role is, how to continue to build a stronger family structure. So I always ask this question when I go into communities is, how is the children? If we got 2.5 million people in our country that are incarcerated, majority of them are men, that means that our children are not well. Our village is sick. Because now you have here where young people are now being influenced by all of the negativity in the community. Young people are now killing one another at a large number. Because why? Because the fathers are not there, so the village is sick. So we have, as a village, have to find ways to pour into those that are incarcerated so that they can become the men that they need to be, so that when they return home to their wives and their daughters and their sons in their village, they now add more inspiration and motivation and add asset, something of value to their community.
Yes, I share your, like I said, I share your sentiment, everything that you are sharing with us this morning. I share everything that you're saying, because if you come to look at it, societal values puts men as head of the family. So if you remove the man as head of the family, the burden goes onto the woman. In a situation where there is no father, there's no mother, and the children go through a system where they are adopted and they don't have the right sort of support system, the family structure, the community structure, everything structure about that breaks down.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what we are experiencing because you know what? In Africa, for instance, more so in Ghana, for instance, where I grew up, it was a taboo. Like my mother would tell me, "Oh, that guy went to jail. No, 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 no. Don't associate yourself with that person,
Mm-hmm.
right? Don't associate yourself in that person." But see, as an adult, you come to look at it, the question that I'm asking myself is, did my mother know why that person was incarcerated?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe she may not have known. But the fact of the matter is for her to see that, okay, don't do that. Don't go there because you get yourself into trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't want you to go through that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Has resonated with a whole lot of Black brothers and sisters from the continent,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, from what you just said, it resonates once again with me. So, what do you think would be the proper kind of scenario? Because the churches are not helping. I will tell you right there.
Mm-hmm.
I will not mince words,
Mm-hmm.
right? The very back home in Africa, there was something wrong back in the day. The first point of call, was to the pastor. Today, we don't see that.
Yeah.
Yes, your take on that. The floor is yours,
Hey,
please.
my brother, it's sitting here, man, and knowing history, understanding the role of community, understanding the role of religion, understanding the role of religious leaders in our community. I would say that we still have a lot of change that we have to do, man.
Amen.
And we have a lot of change. When I, going back again to being like in Cape Coast and Amina, and just riding through, it was kind of disheartening to see that the poverty in the community, and then you see these big churches in the community, right? It's like everywhere. But for me, as a person who's from America, I understand that that is part of colonialism in a lot of ways, right? When we understand the history of different things, you know that religion has always been used to make people docile, instead of strengthening the population of people. So we have to really look at, when we're talking about religion, we have to really make sure that religion is being practiced and implemented in a way of making people stronger, making people see the value in other human beings in a lot of ways. And like I said, we know just the history of Africa, and we know who went in and colonized and did what they did, in that country. It's something that is greatly need a revival in a lot of ways, brother.
Yeah. Folks, we're in conversation with the great Lester Young.
Mm.
Yes, reentry expert and motivational, you know what? There's so many accolades that I've been following you. Lester, I've been following you.
Thank you, my
And
brother.
it's been a tough order to get you on this radio. Because you know what? This topic is very, very important to be discussed because all of us, those of you listening and those of you viewing us on LinkedIn and the other social media platforms, we have all potential convicts. All of us. We could be in
Yeah.
there. So when we bring out topics like this, we have to take it very seriously because you've been through, I would say, hell and back, and you're doing God's work. You're doing what you have to do because every day when I wake up in the morning and I check on my LinkedIn, I see you there. You haven't given up and you are continuing the work that you're doing. And brother, I salute you for what you're doing. The floor is yours, please.
No, I said thank you. Thank you. It's like educate Nelson Mandela was educated before he went to prison. He was promoting respect with his people. Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. But I think the most important part of this too, brother, is that when you mention like what keeps me motivated, and moving forward, it really just comes down to knowing, as I mentioned to you, that I understand that I have a greater purpose in life, brother. You know what I'm saying? That God has put me here for a greater purpose, and the mistakes in which I made, unfortunately, inside of that led me to incarceration. was part of shaping me and preparing me for something greater ahead, right? So that's where I'm at in my life right now. I'm motivated to do what I need to do, to bring awareness to the challenges and that we face here in America and abroad. That we have to understand that prison is not the way to change people and build better and safer societies. Prisons have not made us safer. Passing laws to place men and women in prison doesn't make our society any safer. Crimes have not decreased because of prisons. The only way, when we look at other models of prisons and how communities are created in a safer way, is that going back again, that we have to understand that we have to go back into tapping into the human potential and letting people know that who they are, and understand that sometimes the history of a people's or a nation of a people impact them in different ways. There's this thing called trauma. A lot of us are traumatized by what we experienced from the past. And what we experience from the past sometimes can shape us and put us in bad situations, man. You know what I'm saying? So we have to, like, as a community, we have to start just addressing it from, we have to stop addressing it from just one aspect, but a holistic approach of who we are as human beings. That me as a black man who committed a crime and placed in prison for 22 years, what made me the man that I am today? Because I started addressing me as an entire person. I started changing my mindset, my spirit, my heart, my physical. All of these things allow me to be the man that I am today. And so when we're thinking about prisons and we're thinking about how do we heal the village, we have to heal it in a more holistic way. We can't keep approaching it by passing policies and laws. We have to address a lot of other issues. Poverty, when we talk about poverty in different parts of the world and in your country, poverty is a serious thing. Poverty affects people psychologically, emotionally, spiritually. And when we want to change behavior, we have to sometimes go to the root of that. And that is really addressing poverty so that we can help bring about some type of economic stimulation in these communities, so that these communities can have a sense of pride and sense of well-being in who they are as Africans or people in America.
So in essence, what we're talking about is about the fact that, well, your dignity has been taken away from you.
Mm-hmm.
Number one. Number two, even if everything were looked at as being equal, you don't have any job. When you go look for a job, even though you're qualified, you're not given the job.
Yeah.
So basically, everything is stuck against you.
Mm-hmm.
Your human dignity has been taken. You are broken, so that to even get up will be a difficulty. But you are doing your part within the community to help reverse it. But you can't do it alone.
Mm-hmm.
From where I sit, what can we do as a community to sort of embark on a path to redemption, as the organization is called?
Yeah.
What can we do? And before you respond, I would like to introduce Mr. Joseph Osuji, a human rights lawyer who is in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. He'll be joining us momentarily. But the floor is yours, please.
Do you want me to respond to that? To employ? Well, you know, in the United States, it's like you punish 2 times in the United States when you commit a crime. You go to jail, that's one punishment. When you get out of jail, what they have is called collateral consequences. In the United States, collateral consequences are barriers, systematic barriers that prevent you from moving forward. Here in the United States, we have over 48,000 collateral consequences that prevents people from moving forward that live with a felony conviction. So going back again, that here it is, a person completes their sentence of incarceration. When they walk out of prison, now they're denied some of the basic human right issues. One could be housing. We know that in order for you to be a citizen or even just pick yourselves up and move forward, you need housing. Here in the United States, that if you have a felony conviction, you cannot rent a house. Here in the United States, Senate, if you have a felony conviction, most companies don't hire you with a felony conviction. Here in the United States, if you have a felony conviction, you say, I want to go to school to become a lawyer. I want to become a doctor. I want to become a real estate agent, whatever it may be. because of that felony conviction, is going to hinder you from moving forward and even in that capacity, right? So we know that unfortunately these laws again are put in place to deny you that leverage to rehabilitate and live your path to redemption. So you are constantly fighting to push these walls down. So one of the things that I tell men that I mentor here in the United States is that we have to, again, use our voice to advocate for the policies to change in the society. We have to change these laws. And second, we have to think about entrepreneurship. We have to understand that entrepreneurship is the pathway for success for most of those who are returning home from prison. Creating your own business, writing your own story, being the captain of your own destiny by using your story here. Like I created Path to Redemption LLC, my own business, my own books, to be able to share my story so that I can be able to be a provider for my family. That's through entrepreneurship, right? So we got to be thinking about these different pathways that can really bring about change in our society.
Awesome. Awesome. Folks, we are listening to Loud Afrobeat Music Talk Radio, and the program is Today's Africa. And our special guest today is Mr. Lester Young, a re-entry advocate and author and motivational coach, if I can put it that way. He's giving us some gems that we can be assured that he cannot do this work alone, because the community has been under siege for so many years. We need to turn it around, because we cannot accept our situation as a community to continue any longer. Mr. Osuji, any comment or any question for Lester, please? You're muted.
You can hear me, Mr. Nelson?
Yes, yes.
Thank you so much for this experience and sharing your experience to us. It's very interesting. The prison, the correctional institutions connected with the law, the unjust law or just law, the way it depends on who is analyzing the situation. The things that get you there in the first place is the law. And the law talks about rehabilitations, but it's about punishment. The word is used correctional institution, but it's not really correctional. As you said, it's a different experience. So the law that put you there is the issue that has to be analyzed alongside your efforts. So I am able to connect with you because it's the unjust law, the law that doesn't, colonial law. It's still a colonial law today as we speak. Mm-hmm. Even though it's called different thing in Canada, we have criminal law. In United States, it's called criminal law. In Africa, it's this colonial heritage, origin. Mm-hmm. That's the problem. Yeah. The judges, the lawyers, they all think the same way in most cases. They put people in jail, but what's the alternative? Sometimes advocate alternatives. Nobody wants to hear that. The stigma, the stereotype, being a Black person, it's a double-edged sword against when people go in there. You cannot do anything. But here you are making courageous efforts to educate the population, the young Black offenders. They call them offenders. The young Black minorities, Asians, brown. This is the problem, Mr. Young, that you're trying to address. Mm-hmm. It's very, very sad to say that. The law, I am a lawyer, but what is my role in playing with this unjust law? Mm-hmm. Colonial law, it's still a colonial law, even though it's not being mentioned. Mm-hmm. So I really appreciate your effort. One question I want to ask you, sir, is what do you think about the law? Mm-hmm. What type of effort do you think Black lawyers or any progressive lawyer can do to address that issue?
And I appreciate that question. I appreciate that question, Joseph. You're absolutely right. Is that laws have always been written to penalize and incarcerate people of color in a lot of ways, man. In the United States, when we look at the disparity in the law, you find that a Black man could get caught committing one crime and get 10 years. A white male could commit the same crime and get probation and never go to jail. You know, if the laws have been written in a way to, again, in my opinion, I think that some of these laws have been written in a racist, white supremacy perspective, and how, and it's going back again, it also extends back into the origin of a lot of these things, right? Let's look at the 13th Amendment in the United States. The 13th Amendment says abolishment of slavery, right? This is where 1865, where they abolished slavery. But in the clause in that, what does it say? Except for those that are in prison. That those that are in prison, you can still exploit them to be slaves. You can still use their labor to be slaves. The 13th Amendment, right? So when we're talking about a law here in America, we're advocating to even change that law, because you have men and women who are in prison. They're still doing slave labor. They're still working for major corporations, major companies in America that are now taking their jobs out of the community, putting it in prisons, and getting men and women to work in prison for $1 an hour, which is way below the minimum wage, right? And not only that, they don't have to worry about no health insurance. They don't have to worry about no 401k benefits. They don't have to worry about nothing. And then when this man or woman who's in prison working for this major corporation, half of that money goes back into the prison, right? So when we're talking about laws, I believe that it's very important that we start addressing these laws that have been put in place with the intention to continue to dehumanize and exploit the labor of people, right? Whether that's black and brown people, because the studies show you, statistics show you that the ones that are in prison the most in this country are black people, right? That's what it is. I mean, we look at what in America we have what is called crack cocaine and cocaine. You find that more black people in the early 1990s were sent to prison for less than $25 worth of crack cocaine. And you find a white male get caught with a whole kilo of cocaine and never go to prison, because the laws were saying that it was less punishment for powder cocaine versus rock cocaine, right? So we see the laws, the disparity in the laws just from that alone. They just recently, under the Obama administration, where he advocated and the attorney generals advocated to change that particular law. So that if you get caught with powder cocaine creates crack cocaine, right? But why should a man get charged for a lesser crime with a whole kilo of cocaine, and a black person in a neighborhood get caught with less than $100 worth of cocaine, they go to jail for 25 years? So that's what you're right. We have to address these laws. These laws are not fair in a lot of ways, and it's not favorable for black and brown people in our country. So this is why we have to, as lawyers, progressive lawyers, have to attack these issues, have to attack the collateral consequences. Why should a person, after serving time in prison, why should they be denied access to housing, which is a basic, essential thing in our society, when we say that each one deserve equal opportunity in our society, and you're being denied that? Challenge the stigma of a woman, a mother who's trying to gain custody of her children back after going to jail for whatever reason, and they're saying that a mother cannot get the custody of her child back, her children back, because she has a felony conviction. That's wrong. That's wrong. You know what I mean? So those are the laws that we have to change.
Mr. Nelson, again, I thank you so much. I just want to share my experience. In one of my courtroom experience, I have a young a young offender. Here we call them so-called young offenders, 16 years old. Every time I get him out, he go back to, he do something else. So I was addressing with the court. I said, we have to look at the root causes of all of this. Oh, your client has 16 convictions. So this goes to what you've been saying earlier on, and the host as well. When you break down the family context, and the disparity in enforcing the law. Look at South Africa. The former President Zuma was just given a remission. What about the ordinary people who have been there for years? Just go back to what you're talking about, the treatment, the discrimination, the disparity. Once again, I thank you, sir, for sharing these courageous insights. It encourages me listening to you as a person, as a Black person, a minority, a lawyer, to be progressive. But I need to get more information from you because it's all about you go to law school. You go to law school, you're a member of the law society, all this program, all this organization. It makes you cause fears. You cannot be progress as a. So thank you so much again. But I want to ask you one question.
Okay.
What do you think about the disparity in treatment between young offenders in the United States?
We see it. Unfortunately, we see it's laws in our society again are holding a lot of our young people accountable for an action that they committed at 13 years old. When studies are now showing that the mind of a young person does not fully develop until they're about 21 to 25 years old, right? So we have to again go back again to the incarcerational system. We have to start treating these people as people, just like Brother Joseph, you mentioned offenders. One of the things that I shy away from, I don't refer to people in prison as offenders, inmates, convicts, because those are all part of a language that scripts them of their dignity. That's a young man. His name is whatever his name is. That's how we should refer to these young people, right? But unfortunately, our society, this is going back again to adding the stigma, is that we refer to them as offenders, convicts, inmates, jails. These are words that again add to stripping them of their dignity. Like my name is Lester Young. I'm the son of someone, regardless of the crime that I committed. I'm a son. I'm a brother. I'm not an offender. I'm someone who made a mistake and have the right in this society to change. Correct that mistake in which I've made. So I just think that in our society, when it comes down to addressing young people and the adults in these prison systems, we have to still come back to the baseline for transformation is human dignity. Lead with human dignity and help these young people redefine who they are. They're rebelling in a lot of ways because we all were young. We did some things young we rebelled against, right? But that does not define their destination in the next few years. But it's important for us as a community, as I mentioned earlier, is that we have to understand that it takes a village to raise a child. And we as a village have to see them as humans, not as offenders, not as this, but we have to see them as human beings, a young person who made a mistake, and it's our duty as citizens, as the village keepers, is to pour into him or her to the best of our ability. Blessing, sister.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joseph. Great insights into what you've put on the table. And joining us right now, all the way in Zimbabwe. That's right. Makaita Magarezano, a re-entry advocate, a lawyer, and CEO and founder of Alleviate Justice Involved Persons Re-entry Association. Welcome to the program once again, my sister.
Thank you so much, Brother Theo, for having me, and thank you for letting me share the mic with Lester.
It's been great because you know what? The last time, Makaita, you were here, and after the show, you've been here a couple of times, and after the show, I saw some chat going on. I don't know whether it was Lester or you who said, I would like to be on the show. Oh, you did on the show. And here we are, Zimbabwe and the United States. We are one and the same people, facing one destiny. Makaita, please introduce yourself to those of the listeners out there who may not have, gotten wind of who you are. And then you told me that you have some questions and some, you want to solicit some advice from Lester. And here we are. Yes, the floor is yours, please. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Brother Theo. First of all, I'd like to commend Sir Lester Young for the work that he's doing. Your work is going far beyond the American borders. I'm here in Zimbabwe. You inspire us. You empower us. We talk about you in our very small groups. I'm like, there is Sir Lester Young in the United States. He spent 22 years in prison, and the young fellows will be listening. I showed them your pictures. We're like, log on to your LinkedIn page, we'll go to your website, and I'll be like, this is the guy, and they'll be like, oh wow.
Global superstar.
Yes, he is. He truly is. After spending 22 years in prison, just coming out to inspire people, that's commendable. That's commendable. Thank you so much, Celeste Young, for everything. All right, my name is Makaita Magarezano. I'm a lawyer, former prosecutor, and I started re-entry work because I saw the plight of so many people coming back to prison. It was like, them getting stuck in this revolving door of, crime. I thought to myself, how best can I assist them? And that's when I came up with this theory. I didn't even know that it was called re-entry work. I knew that I just wanted to help people. So it's actually inspiring, like going through Celeste Young's story. He started path redemption when he was still in prison, So, and it always speaks of God giving you a vision before you start something. So yes, that's me. That's Makaita. Yes.
It's like this, right? Like you said, I started this vision. God says, write the vision down and chase it. When I was in prison, once I aligned myself with my destiny, and that was to become the man that God created me to be and get back on course, God started giving me this vision. Path to redemption was something God gave me in prison. And I went to prison reading at a 7th grade level of education. I never graduated from high school. I went to prison before I graduated from high school. But in that prison, I realized that the thing that I needed to do, I needed to invest time into changing my mindset. So that's why when I go into the prisons today and I talk to people, I'm like, we have to help people understand the value that they bring to the world. I was this young person who didn't understand my value. Now I do. And I wrote that vision down, and God made the vision a reality because I believe in God's promise. He says that write it down and chase it, and I will make it a reality. So I love what you all are doing in all the different areas that you're working in.
Thank you so much. Okay, sir, you what was going through your story and looking at our situation here in Zimbabwe, I thought you'd be the best person to answer this question for me. A couple of months ago, we had the amnesty here in Zimbabwe. A few people, or about 4,000 people, were released from Zimbabwean prisons through the presidential pardon and the presidential amnesty. But there was a public outcry. The public was enraged because the rapists were released, some before their, even past the mark of their sentence. So people were pretty much enraged by that. And one of the reasons was, the impact. How would the victim feel? You yourself, having committed a serious offense, what lessons or how would you tell people, or what lessons of forgiveness would you impact onto the African society that is still hell-bent on the eye for an eye, on retribution, or the desire for revenge?
Yeah. Great question. Are you familiar with restorative justice?
Yes, I am. It actually started in Africa, and we actually had restorative practices here in Africa, and then the white people came and introduced prisons, and then they took away our valuable resources and left prisons for us.
Yeah. So going back again to the answer to that question, Nikita, is that restorative justice is the best way. Like, we know that we have a model in South Africa and different parts of the country in Africa, right? Is that we have to start implementing the restorative practice in our country. Like, instead of just, and it doesn't wait until a person is released from prison. Restorative practice should be taught while they're in prison, bringing the community together, because these individuals are going to come home just through this amnesty program, right? So it's about going back to those principles of how to bring the individual who committed the crime and the victim of the crime, bring them together to begin building this healthy process of a restorative justice practice. And that is, again, letting the individual who committed the crime be able to get to that point where he or she is able to listen to the voice of the victim. In our society today, we don't never hear from the offender. the person who committed the crime, right? Because we were like, oh, they're going to forever be that bad person. You don't know the transformation that person has went through while they're incarcerated. And by keeping that a person, the victim and the person who committed the crime separate, is always going to create a type of animosity, a type of hatred, a type of anger there. So I would say, sis, and my sister, is like, go back to where it came from, restorative justice, implement that. That is the practice that you know that worked on the continent of Africa and South Africa, and here it is in America. We're now practicing a restorative justice. Everywhere I go in this country and travel, I hear the restorative justice, but not people don't give credit that it came from the continent, right? So that would be me, I believe, is the key thing to begin the healing process there. We don't have to look outside. Like I have the Sankofa behind me, right? You know what the Sankofa means? What? Go back into the past and take the lessons from the go in the future, right? So we know what worked in our country, and that's restorative justice. That's a lesson from the past that our ancestors have shown us that work. So that we moving forward in the future, we cannot reinvent anything new. Use what we know that worked and change the minds and the hearts of the people.
Awesome, awesome. And I've got Ron Alexander says a Black Wall Street in 2023 will definitely survive and will be a foundation to build again, to build upon, not only financial but mental.
Yeah.
Any comment on that?
I mean, we know that we got Black Wall Street. We know the history in Tulsa, Alabama, here in the United States, where whites saw blacks built an economic power structure in a certain part of Tulsa, and they destroyed it because of the fear. They don't want, again, it was just out of the fear that they destroyed this whole community. So we are right now, when we're talking about Black Wall Street, that's bringing all of our resources and skill sets together to build a better community economically. So when we're talking about poverty, when we're talking about community, people returning back into the community, that's why I believe that entrepreneurship, for those who are incarcerated, we need to be teaching more about entrepreneurship, teaching people how to use their skills to create businesses and build businesses so that they can continue to rebuild this Black Wall Street in whatever country, whatever community they're in, using their resources to build the economy back up through the skill sets that they have.
Yes, I got another text from Keisha in upstate New York. And Keisha wants to know whether there's been an amnesty granted, just like how Makaita has said in Zimbabwe, 4,000 people were released. In the United States, has there been an amnesty for the sort? Because I'm looking at it from the point of view that a lot of, like you indicated, 2.5 million people are in jail, right? And I don't think they want to reverse that. Has there been anything like that?
No, America doesn't do the amnesty like that. We do what is called a clemency, and that's only a small fraction of people who have political powers, influence to get clemency from the governor or the president of the United States. But that's not in a large number. You will never see that many people released out of the prisons here in the United States. It won't happen. But being that in Zimbabwe, they are practicing an amnesty, releasing those inside of the prison system. This is why I say again, I think that the restorative justice practice is so important. It cannot be something that is ignored, because these people are returning back into the community. And when you have that type of anger and an unforgiving heart for the community, then that can create turmoil for the community, right? Now that creates an unrest in the community. So we have to begin helping families heal from the harm that has been done to them, and we don't address that here in America. I know we don't address it. We're not focusing on healing. We're focused on punishment here. But going back into Africa and Zimbabwe and different parts of the country, that's not our nature as Black people. Our nature is not to have a nature of bitterness and retaliation and harm. Our nature is for a forgiving nature. That's who we are as Black people, regardless of where you are. You look here in America, no matter what harm has been done to us here in America, we lead with forgiveness. That's just the nature of who we are as Black people, right? No matter where you are. So I believe that we cannot adopt these European practices and how they punish and treat people and try to put them into an African continent, into an African community. We have to use the principles that we know work for our people, has always worked. The St. Kufa says, take from the past. We know that healing is the thing that we need in our community, and all of we have a forgiving heart.
Great. Folks, we are in conversation. We are having a very good time here. We are learning a lot of gems out there. And Brother Earl Sorrell says, when the government gives a false narrative of equality and freedom, Black people are not aware that the administration of the law is based on what the law was to protect. The law was written to keep down the Black-hearted, which is considered evil. So when the Black body comes before the law, the penalty is higher and greater. Joseph.
Yes. The word of, again, it goes back to what Mr. Young had been talking about all along. All these are all connected, even these questions. The origin of the law, he talks about restorative justice. But the problem is that justice, what is justice? We need holistic approach. So when the government give a force, like here we have human rights, the Canadian Human Rights Act. What does that it says human rights. How does that apply to people incarceration? How does that apply to the criminal law? So the human right is limited. It's only specifically applied in a specific forum, specific people. It doesn't apply generally. We're talking about restorative justice in the criminal law. The criminal law is the most dangerous. I will use the word dangerous. That's the criminal, the power to put in jail. Not just that. So I don't believe the government has any good intention unless they start having a holistic approach, adopting what Mr. Lesser has been telling, to look at he's not only a victim, but he's all his idea. If the government can listen, there has to be, there have to be changes to the criminal justice system in America, for example. So there's something like government. Who is government? The government is not for Black or brown. Government is people look after their interests, the elites. So I do not believe is to protect. To protect who? To protect themselves. They protect themselves. So we need to look at the holistic approach, like what Mr. Young has been advocating. And if people can listen, the government can listen, then we can have organic solution to all of these things, not to solve all the problem at one time, to make a progress as we speak.
Awesome. Makaita, any comment on that? Makaita? Any comment on that, please?
My sound is a bit faint.
Oh, you couldn't get the what Mr. Sorrell said was that when the government gives a false narrative for equality and freedom, Black people are not aware that the administration of the law is based on what the law was to protect. The law was written to keep down the Black-hearted, which is considered evil. So when the Black body comes before the law, the penalty is higher and now greater.
Yes, I agree with that. But the thing here is, with African governments now, we simply adapted and took laws from Western countries, and without research, without looking into how they will affect our African population and our people. Just like with Africans, we take everything from Western countries without much research. It is only now that people are beginning to see that those laws are not Pan-African, they're not pro-African, and they are only setting us back. So it's going to take a long time to change the current laws, but I do believe that it's doable. There has to be education imparted across all the people to now get out the belief that is already in the mindset of the general population, so that we can actually start develop our own laws. Like we have been talking, in respect to restrictive justice practices. If we go back to our own ways of doing things in an African way, the chiefs used to do their community courts, we'll definitely have a great or an awesome criminal justice system. So yes, it is a slow process, but it's doable. We have to just get our people to believe and to understand why those old laws are not to our advantage.
Can I add? I want to add to that, McKee. We can see the laws in America that some African countries have adopted, right? They've adopted certain laws. They adopted how the prisons are set up. They adapted a lot of that stuff, right? And we see it is not even working in America, right? So why would you borrow, or why would you use a law that is not working in someone else's homeland? If you're talking about a population of 2.5 million people in this country that are incarcerated, that means that our incarceration system still is still broken in a lot of ways. When you're talking about 70 million people in the United States have a felony conviction, that says a lot. That's 70 million people. 1 in 3 people in this country have been impacted by this thing called the criminal legal system. So that right there lets you know. So most people, going back again to what I mentioned earlier, having the opportunity to come to Ghana and to walk into the slave dungeon in Cape Coast and to see the whole architectural structure of how they kept our ancestors in these small rooms. When they shipped those who survived it into the door of no return, and they in the different diaspora, they shipped the whole concept of prison with them.
Yeah.
Like when I went to the last bath in Ghana and saw like how, that last bath, how they script, that was like the last time they washed you before they shipped you out into the different parts of the land, of the country, right? Diaspora. In America, prisons is a very similar thing. I was able to make the connection. Like before you go into American prisons, they shave your head just like they did in the last bath. They spray you down, they wash you, they check your mouth, they check your body, they invade all of your body, your private parts, they strip you naked, and then they give you a prison number. Mm-hmm. The same when I had the opportunity to do this tour in Ghana, I saw the connection. Most people who are in America don't see the connection. The last bath, the castle, all of it was tied into a belief system and an ideology that was taken from not only did they take the human bodies from Africa, they took the concept, the whole ideology, the whole principle of how they created this system. So we cannot continue to borrow from a system that is broken to fix our country. We have to come up with our own ways of doing things. And the Sankofa clearly shows that if you want to change, go back to the past, not the past when colonialism and imperialism and robbing of the nation of its natural resources. Don't learn from that part of the history. Learn from the history that made Africa great, that made the people wanted to come to Africa to take. We have a rich history of how we resolve and deal with our people. We have to go back to that when we're talking about changing the prisons in Zimbabwe. We cannot continue to borrow from this particular belief system because it's not even working in its own land. Respectfully, we have to learn from our ancestors. They showed us. We have it in the elders in the community what we need to do to change behavior in our country. We can't continue to rely upon these false belief systems.
Awesome. Folks, this topic is so important. So the producers have given us extra time to go through it. We cannot continue the old system of looking at things. Something has got to change. Today, let me digress a little bit. Africa is in rebellion. Africa is rebelling. If you go to Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, Chad, young people are saying enough is enough. We've borrowed enough from the outside. Let's look at ourselves as Africans, what we can do to help us, what we can do to prevent outsiders from coming to tell us that, hey, I mean, we can't give you that. We've been going up. The more I speak about it, the more I become emotional. Because Dr. Kwame Nkrumah said, Africa is not poor. Africans are poor. And yet, when we go out there to be treated as equals because of the vestiges of colonialism, we are not looked at as equals. But there has to be a point in time where we will have to say enough is enough. We can do things for ourselves, because he said again, the black man or the black person is capable of making mistakes and correcting them. You know what? So this is where we are at. And I commend you, sir, for what you are doing and for what Makaita is doing. Before we wrap up, Makaita has something to say. And she said, that she would like an advice as to how she has to also handle what she is facing right now, because she is making also a difference. She's following your footsteps, because right now we are getting a lot of texts from around the globe with respect to what you're doing, Lester. Continue to do what you're doing. Makaita, the floor is yours.
Okay, brother. I just wanted to reiterate on what you were saying. We spoke of Africans taking on those Western laws, but the funny thing now is, you look at countries like Denmark, Finland, and European countries, they're actually changing their laws. That is why I said in my earlier statement that Africans are not doing much research. These European countries are actually changing their criminal justice system, and they're taking up on our African way of doing things. They're taking on restorative justice practices, and they're making them their own. And you'd find out there's actually great change. Crime has reduced in those countries. And, whilst here in Africa, we are advocating for stiffer penalties, in Denmark, they're literally giving, maybe 10 to 15-year sentences for people who have committed grievous offenses, like rape and murder. And yet we are saying that people should rot in prison. There's really less research. We need to not just talk or, just open our mouths and talk. We need to put our mouths where the money is and change our systems for us, to the benefit of our people. Like you said, Africans, Africa is not poor, it's Africans who are actually poor. There's money to do all the research, to write new laws for us, but it's not being done. Here in Zimbabwe, we actually have a prison bill, which is written, and we find out that there's not even one person who is a prisoner who has been invited to sit and, add to the policies or to the discussions. And we're just going to go back in circles, because the people who simply have the ideas and the knowledge, who are actually sitting in that seat, the hot seat, to say, what, for this thing to work, you need to do this and that. Like Mr. Lester Young, he's been through it. So he'll be the best person to put on that table to change the laws. So you have this bill that's being tabled there, but it's only, people in white shirts and nice ties, without involving the people who are experiencing this. So Africa will keep going back. It will keep going in circles. So, yeah, I don't know.
Hey, listen, can I say this? You're absolutely right. You're spot on. When we look at Norway and Denmark, they going back into human dignity. They are treating their citizens as human versus as criminals. When the whole other parts of the world is criminalizing the person who commits the crime, they're saying that the only way that we can transform behavior is that we have to treat them with dignity. Their prisons are set up different. everything about how Norway and Denmark is treating those that have committed a crime is completely different how we see it in Africa and all different parts of the world. This way of what we're doing it has not worked in the last 100 years or the last 50 years of prisons in this country, right? It's not working. So what they're doing in Norway, you see that now they're changing in how they even structure the jail cells. They're modifying the prisons. They're modifying the treatment centers inside of the prisons. But we're still saying, punish them, punish them, punish them, and it's not working. When other countries have now said, I'm going to break away from this old belief system of punishment and stop focusing on humanizing and rehabilitation, because that study shows that that's how you transform people. You don't change and make safe communities by punishment. So you're spot on with that. And I truly believe that we have to go back to what we know work. And as I said, we are from a nation where our hearts are more loving hearts, and we know the law. We know that laws don't change people. It's the human dignity and the compassion that we lead to, an empathy that changes the hearts and minds of those who have committed a crime, right? So, I would love, you and I, we need to definitely, sis, I appreciate the work that you're doing in Zimbabwe. We definitely have to get on a separate call, and you and I, whatever I could do to let's do some brainstorming on what we can continue to share ideas and create this American and Zimbabwe view of what reentry is, and try to package that and be able to change that system and be a model for all of the other parts of the country, right? So I would love to get on a call with you to let's think about how we can actually bring about a change in this system, so please inbox me later, and we can set up a date sometime in the coming weeks where you and I can just jump on a separate call and start brainstorming and thinking about how I can help in this capacity.
As a matter of fact, there are other people who would like to also talk to you. Earl Sorrell would also like to talk to you. Before we go, Lester, how can people reach you?
If you're on LinkedIn, you can just go to Lester Young on LinkedIn and just inbox me that way, or go to my website, path2redemption.org, and reach me that way. But like I said, if you're on LinkedIn, on Facebook, or anything like that, it's Lester Young. Just find me and reach out to me, because I really want to do a mastermind brainstorming session with other leaders like Makaita to think about what we need to do and changing a system. How do we bring back a restorative justice? How do we create an African model of rehabilitation instead of seeing a country like Denmark or Norway? But we need to start talking about what does Africa bring into different parts of Africa, bring into this rehabilitation space, and how we are changing laws and how we create a model there that can now be brought to the whole world because of what we know we're capable of doing and bringing about rehabilitation.
Awesome. Makaita, how can people also reach you? Makaita? I think she's frozen. She's in a warm country, but she's frozen. Yeah, how can people reach you, Makaita?
Okay, I'm having a bad network. The sound is really slow, so I'm trying really hard to listen to what you are saying. LinkedIn, my LinkedIn is best. It's Makaita Chikami Magarezano, just as what's written on the screen. So yeah, let's use LinkedIn.
Awesome. And Joseph, thank you for sharing your insights with us, because Joseph is a brand new member on this panel, and we'll be bringing him back. And Lester, this radio station is for us. How it is that we want to bring the community together, because we have stories to tell. Just like I always say, and I'll repeat it: if you have a story and you don't tell the story yourself, and you ask somebody else to tell the story for you, it becomes his story, not your story. We want to be able to go out there, educate, entertain our community, because sometimes we don't have the wherewithal. We need to be pushed because of the fact that we've been brokenhearted. Because in Canada, for instance, for us to be able to come together, I'll share this with you. This past Friday, this station was invited to attend a Black parliamentary dinner and a conference. And this gathering was about how Black elected officials around Canada can come together, irrespective of which party you are in, from school boards, from municipal, provincial, and federal. Now we are finding our niche to come together to sort of put together a policy or something to help us to get into the way the governance systems have been structured. We need educational experts like you, Lester, Makaita, Joseph. All of us putting our hands together will make a difference. And thank you once again, Lester. Come back again. Makaita, this is your home. Lester, this is your home. Joseph, this is your home. And until we meet again in 7 days, take care of yourselves and each other. And remember, we are trying as much as possible to bring the community together. My name is DJ TYB, the place to be. Take care of yourselves once again and each other. Bye-bye.